You know, when we think about what wins a war, our minds immediately go to the big stuff, right? Tanks, planes, heroic soldiers on the front line. But what if I told you the history books often miss the real hero, the one thing that actually keeps an entire army from grinding to a halt? We're about to tell the story of a piece of equipment that was so despised, it was officially declared a failure, right before it became the secret weapon that drove the Allies all the way to Berlin.
I mean, just look at this. This isn't some random opinion. This is the official, expert verdict from the British military in 1940, looking at a brand new American truck. Unsuitable for modern mechanized warfare. That's not just saying it has a few problems. That's a total rejection. And yet, this very truck would go on to save an entire army. So how on earth does a machine declared worthless become a war-winning legend? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve today. To really understand the legend, we've got to start at its pretty humble, less than glorious beginnings. This thing wasn't some revolutionary new design. It was basically a modified commercial truck, and its first big audition on the world stage, well, it was kind of a disaster.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is a really cool story of evolution. On the left, you've got the original, the CCKW. It had this tiny 77 horsepower engine. And when the British got their hands on it, they found it just couldn't cut it on the rough European roads. I mean, it was too slow, it wheezed its way up hills, got stuck in the mud all the time. They sent it back, rejected. But here's the genius part. The engineers back at General Motors, they didn't see failure, they saw data. They went back to the drawing board, developed a new engine pushing 104 horsepower, and crucially, they improved the torque. That's the raw pulling power you need for hauling heavy stuff. And the result is the truck on the right, the CCKW, the truck that would famously become known as the Jimmy.
And they didn't just make a few of them. No, this number right here, this is the core of the entire American war strategy in a nutshell. Overwhelming industrial power. General Motors pumped out over 500,000 of these things. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that one single American truck model, that's almost as many as all the trucks the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan, produced combined during that same time. The strategy was never about building the perfect truck. It was about building a good enough truck in such massive, staggering numbers that the enemy just couldn't keep up.
So, let's fast forward to the summer of 1944. The CCKW has been in service for a couple of years now, but it's about to face its ultimate test. A massive crisis is brewing in France, one that's putting the entire Allied invasion on the brink of complete and utter failure. The story is no longer about the factory floor. It's about the front lines. You see, after being stuck in Normandy for weeks after D-Day, the Allies finally broke through the German lines in what was called Operation Cobra, and General George S. Patton's Third Army was, well, it was unleashed. They were moving at an incredible speed, sometimes covering 80 miles in a single day. It was this spectacular success, but it created a new enemy, one that was maybe more dangerous than any German tank division, the tyranny of distance. The front line was just moving way too fast for the supply line to keep up.
This chart, this just shows you the insane scale of the problem. Patton's army, by itself, needed 400,000 gallons of fuel every single day. Just to give you an idea, a single Sherman tank would burn through 150 gallons just to go 100 miles, and all of that fuel, plus every bullet, every food ration, it all had to be trucked 350 miles from the beaches of Normandy over roads that had been totally torn apart by war. Patton's tanks were literally running dry, grinding to a halt right in the middle of this historic advance.
And here's the supreme irony of the whole situation. To stop the Germans from moving troops to Normandy before D-Day, Allied bombers had spent months systematically destroying the French railway system, every bridge, every rail yard they could find. And the strategy worked perfectly. In fact, it worked a little too perfectly, because now, with the major ports destroyed and the railroads in total ruins, there was only one way to get supplies to the front: trucks. Thousands upon thousands of trucks.
So American logistics officers get together for this emergency meeting. And in just 36 hours, they came up with a plan that was so audacious, so completely desperate, it really could only have been dreamed up in America, the home of the highway. They decided to create the largest non-stop truck convoy in the history of the world. The whole concept was brilliantly simple. They marked out two main highways running parallel to each other and made them one-way only. One road was for loaded trucks heading east, to the front. The other was for empty trucks coming back west for more. The name, Red Ball Express, was an old railroad term for cargo that had top priority. They'd mark it with a red ball so that all other traffic had to get out of the way. Now, those red balls were painted on signs and on the hoods of trucks all across France. The mission was crystal clear: keep those trucks rolling, no matter what.
So, logistics officers scrambled and pulled together nearly 6,000 trucks,
mostly our hero, the CCKW, from every corner of the war zone. But a truck is just a useless hunk of metal without a driver. And this is where a really dark reality of the American military at the time provided an unexpected solution. And it introduced the other heroes of this story.
You have to remember, in the strictly segregated U.S. Army of 1944, racist policies meant that African American soldiers were often considered unfit for combat roles. So where were they assigned? Overwhelmingly, to service and transportation units. So when the urgent call went out for thousands of truck drivers, it was these men who answered. A staggering 3/4, 75% of the Red Ball Express drivers were African American. These were men who had faced discrimination their entire lives, and now they were being entrusted with the single most critical supply mission of the war.
The Red Ball Express ran for 82 days straight, and you have to understand this wasn't just a supply run, it was an absolute ordeal. For the drivers and for their trucks, it was a non-stop journey through a landscape of pure exhaustion, constant danger, and unbelievable pressure. Let's just try to process what this actually meant. A single round trip could take over 54 hours of continuous driving. At night, they drove in total blackout conditions, using these tiny little cat's eye headlights that barely lit up the road in front of them. They were dealing with random German air raids, the constant threat of landmines left behind. The drivers would actually remove the speed governors from their engines so they could push the trucks over 60 miles an hour, which is a terrifying thought in a fully loaded truck from the 1940s. But the biggest enemy of all, it was just sheer fatigue. These men were pushed way past the point of human endurance, kept awake by nothing more than willpower and coffee.
This quote here from Private James Rookard, it really brings it all home. Can you imagine the fear, the constant drone of the engine, the bone-deep exhaustion, seeing your friend's trucks get blown up? But through all of that, there was this incredible sense of duty. They knew that men's lives depended on them. When Patton said be there, they were there. It was a promise they kept through sheer unbelievable grit.
In this slide, this highlights such a powerful contradiction at the heart of the whole story. The official U.S. Army policy was strict segregation. But out there on those dark, dangerous roads, reality was something very different. When a truck broke down or a German shell landed nearby, the color of your skin mattered a whole lot less than your chances of survival. The combat troops waiting for supplies didn't care who was driving the truck. They just cared about the gasoline and ammo he was bringing. Now, the Red Ball Express didn't magically erase prejudice, but it proved beyond any doubt that victory absolutely depended on the very soldiers the Army had marginalized. So what about our worthless truck through all this? Well, this is where that initial British evaluation was proven so spectacularly wrong. The CCKW's greatest strength was never its high performance, it was its beautiful simplicity. These trucks were constantly breaking down. Engines overheated, transmissions gave out, tires blew, but because the design was so basic, these exhausted mechanics could perform miracles on the side of the road with just a few simple tools. They'd make gaskets out of scrap metal, they'd cannibalize parts from one broken truck to get another one moving. A more complicated high-tech truck would have been completely useless out there. The Jimmy, it just kept rolling.
The Red Ball Express officially ended its historic run on November 16, 1944, once the port of Antwerp was finally opened up. But its impact and the impact of that simple truck and its incredible drivers would echo for decades to come.
The final numbers are they're staggering. In 82 days, they delivered over 412,000 tons of supplies. On its busiest day, the Red Ball Express delivered over 12,000 tons of stuff. That's a logistical feat that the experts before the war would have said was absolutely impossible. They didn't just meet the demand, they blew past all expectations and sustained the most rapid military advance in history.
And the ultimate validation, the ultimate proof, it comes from the one man you'd least expect, General Patton himself. The guy famous for his love of tanks and aggressive, hard-charging tactics, he understood a fundamental truth of war that we sometimes forget. An army is just a mob without supply. Tanks are just big metal sculptures if they don't have fuel. And it was the humble, supposedly flawed 2.5-ton truck that made his legendary advance possible.
And that's really the crucial takeaway from all this. The legacy here is so much bigger than just one battle. This operation saved the Allied advance, which very likely shortened the war by months. It literally rewrote the book on military logistics. And maybe most importantly, the incredible performance of these African-American soldiers provided undeniable, irrefutable proof that segregation was built on a lie. Their service and their sacrifice became a powerful piece of evidence in the long, hard fight to desegregate the U.S. military, which thankfully finally happened just a few years later.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on.
The story of the CCKW and the Red Ball Express is this powerful reminder that the most decisive factors in any success are often the ones we don't see. The boring logistics, the simple tools, the unsung heroes doing the unglamorous work day in and day out. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the overlooked trucks and the unseen drivers in our own world, quietly making everything else possible?